I've handled so many different anniversaries for clients way before the digital time, and it's interesting that now we're celebrating our 20th and we're doing it on a digital platform. But I remember when we did the Barclays 80th anniversary, there was no digital. So, how did we do it? We had to have paid up ads, we had to put our message out there, and that's how we celebrated. There was no way of having YouTube channels or, Facebook, Instagram, it just wasn't there. Press releases, I remember, would have to be done by 4 o'clock because that's when the traditional media would put the newspaper to bed. So you had to have your information out by 4 o'clock. You didn't really have an audience. I mean, you just had, you would tell the story and it would stay wherever you told it. That would be it. There was no movement. I mean, when we watch what goes on now, when you've put out a story, somebody's going to come back, you're going to have to respond to that. But it was just such a different world. Your network at that time, was really the 4 newspapers, the 4 media houses. And if you knew the journalists in those media houses, you could tell your story to them. And that was the extent of how far your message could get out. So it was a really, nobody would have anticipated PR becoming what it is now. Nobody would have anticipated that actually everybody's a PR person now. Everybody that has a phone is basically a PR person. There were just very few of us PR people then because we were the ones that wrote the press releases, we were the ones that would talk to the journalists, and that was the extent of us getting the message out. Celebrating anniversaries or corporate events, everything was just done in print media, and you could get a little bit of TV and radio, but that was all you had. So it was really interesting that, one was building a brand as I was at a time when there wasn't digital. So you were creating your brand without the luxury that people who are creating brands of their personas today have, in that they have this whole platform of being able to create a persona. So I look back sometimes and say, how did I create a brand for myself without digital? It was challenging. I won't lie to you. It was challenging. I didn't realize at the time, but you would have to be telling your story through traditional media. You would have to be convincing the journalists that you actually had a story, that actually what you were saying was worth them giving you some space in their newspaper. And there was a lot of competition for space. Everybody was competing for that little tiny inch of space in the newspapers. So, when you look at now, when there's no problem with space to tell your story, there's the whole internet out there for you to tell your story. It's just a completely different world. And I think, if you've managed to create or build a brand through traditional media, then, digital should be easier. Sometimes I find it quite a challenge myself because it's just so interactive. It can be just overwhelming at times that you put out a story for a client, before you know it, somebody has come back with a completely different side of the story. And before, what you said as a PR person was the authority. That was the story. There was absolutely no argument to that. That was your story, and that's where it stayed. Now you're getting to a conversation. So the whole idea of conversations really only happened when we got into the digital sort of arena of PR. There were no conversations before. It was just a one-way discussion. That was it. You did not get feedback. There was no way of your clients giving you feedback. We used to have newsletters, or, I know at Barclays we would put in a newsletter with the statement, and that was how you were able to tell whether your service was good. So it's really interesting, and sometimes I look back and say, I would love to perhaps be in a corporate role now, with the advantage and with the luxury of the digital platforms that we have. And obviously we do that for clients now. And it's really meant that the company, the organization, the DNA of a corporate, of a organization like mine, and the culture has had to change, to evolve, to become ready for this huge arena of conversations where you're actually having to have a conversation with your clients, conversation with the guy on the street who thinks they know something about your brand. And that can be completely different to what the story is, but you still have to convince them of what you're saying, and you have the ability, but you have to be available continuously. I think it's quite overwhelming at times that you have to be on all the time. So the the focus on the PR person now and what is required of them is very different to what it was when I first started. Right now, the PR person seriously has to be on all the time, and not just the PR person, the CEO. I mean, the CEOs are all on Twitter. People are writing directly to them. So they're cutting through a lot of the red tape that was there when I was there. I mean, before, if you wanted to talk to the CEO of Barclays, well, you had to come through me and I would get the message to him, and then maybe 3 or 4 days later they'd get back to you. I mean, the idea that you would be able to actually write directly to the CEO of an organization online and expect that he would answer you immediately. And if he doesn't, well, that would be another, then you'd be able to criticize him for not doing that. It's just a whole revolution out there. And, I just feel very grateful that I've been part of this communications revolution in Africa. It's just a very, very exciting to be on the continent doing what I'm doing at this time.